And I'll go ahead and enter a username for that. I'm going to use my administrator user. Normally I'd want to actually create a user that has minimal rights to read this data source. But I'll just do this for demonstration purposes. Okay, and as is typical, my first attempt to add this data source failed, and just to prove that this is a live real demo, and this is typically what would happen. Let's investigate that. So let's make sure that the user that I had used does have access to this server instance, and this user does not. I can see what I've done, and I'm going to go ahead and use the local user. And like I said, you would normally set up a domain user for this purpose, much like I would for a service account. Let's check that. That works. That's okay. So we'll go ahead and use that user. So it's Intel biz-data and the password, and that connects this time. We'll go ahead and save those credentials, and we're good to go. So at this point, I have data sources set up for anything that I want to connect to through the Enterprise Gateway. First thing that I'm going to do is open up Power BI Desktop, and I'm going to connect to my first relational database. Now, my purpose for showing this to you is just to show you DirectQuery against a typical relational database, not necessarily a database at scale. All right, so I'll use get data. We'll go ahead and connect to a SQL Server database, and I'll enter my server name. I can skip the database for now, so it prompts me. So if I were to import data, this would be a typical Power BI desktop project where I'm importing all of the data into an in-memory model within Power BI. When I publish that, then that's going to push all of my data into the cloud. Now, the advantage of having an enterprise gateway data source set up with the same connection information is that would allow me to schedule a refresh that would update the data in that published cloud-based model. But we're going to use DirectQuery instead. I'll go ahead and click OK. That should then prompt me for a database on that server. I'll go ahead and choose the AdventureWorks DW database, and then I'm going to choose some tables. So in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and just choose a few tables. So I'll point out that preparing queries against a production-like database is typically a time-consuming process. You'll want to create your query. That's going to pull in a preview of every table. You'll want to rename each table, like I'm doing right here, using friendly names. Let's use the product category table. I'll take off the prefix. I'll go ahead and put a space in here, pressing enter to save that. Then I'm going to go through and get rid of every column that I don't need. I'll rename columns so that the names are user-friendly. You're preparing a user experience here, so you want to make sure that all of your object names are friendly and easy for a user to consume. So I'm going to do a little cooking show demo just to make a transition, since I've already got a project set up for this purpose. So here you can see that I've renamed each of my tables. I've also deleted a lot of the columns, and here I've hidden a lot of columns that I may or may not need in calculations. We'll go ahead and just show you that I've defined a couple of measures. Before I talk about measures, let's take a look at the diagram for this model. Keep in mind again that using DirectQuery, there is no data inside this Power BI desktop file. It's only metadata that describes these tables and columns and not the actual data. So the relationships were inherited from SQL Server when I made the connection. I've created a couple of measures, and I just wanted to show you that I can create simple aggregate measures, but what I cannot do is I can't use any of my time intelligence functions. So a lot of DAX functions are not available in DirectQuery simply because it would have to create some very complex T-SQL queries behind the scenes. Let me close that window. I don't want to save that back to the project that we were working on. So what I will do is after I've created a simple measure like my sales total, oftentimes I would want to do a sales prior year and use the same period last year function, but you can see that that function isn't available. I might want to do a sales year to date, and I would use the total year to date function, but that function is also not available. So be aware of the restrictions and the limitations when using DirectQuery. You have a limited set of DAX functions that you can use with that.